I spoke to Ajith Sunghay, who is head of the UN Human Rights Office in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. Ajith was recently on a week-long field visit to Gaza, where he talked to caregivers and refugees in several camps for the internally displaced persons. And I began by asking him what he saw in the besieged enclave.
You have described the situation quite well. I mean, the situation is very dire. Out of the 2.2, 2.3 million Gazan population, about 1.9 are displaced, and many of them multiple times. So you see fatigued, tired Palestinians also mourning the loss of their family members, relatives, and moving towards Rafah, which is now crammed with 1.5 million population and growing on a daily basis. While the bombardment continues in the north and in Khan Yunis and in several parts of Gaza. So what you have now is a desperate population with massive need for humanitarian aid, like our colleagues from WFP and WHO described. So you also have this population which is tired, hungry, desperate, and also disappointed.
Ajith, how close are we, to the Gaza Strip being completely uninhabitable? This is something the UN has actually described, used those terms before. And I also want to bring in this latest description of the triangle of death. Can you explain to us how hunger, dehydration, and disease are coming together to just make for a really, tragic situation?
Indeed. Look, I mean, there is a major shortage of humanitarian aid, like I mentioned, particularly food, water, sanitary products, medicines, hygiene products. So, like you mentioned, Gaza population was already, before the war, dependent on food aid. But with the war and major constraints in getting aid into Gaza, but not just getting into Gaza, but to several other parts of Gaza, particularly in the north, there's a massive shortage of food. I mean, what you see is family members going to bed with one meal a day. And I've seen, like I've described in one of the statements, about 100 kids running behind a cart with cooked food. So there's that element of desperation for food, and also lack of clean water. I mean, water itself is scarce. But then again, like one of the IDPs described there, the water that you get is salty, and it's not clean. One other aspect that you see is sewage. These are unplanned, informal IDP camps with thousands of people stranded there, where sewage is flowing in all directions. And very recently, you had a storm-like situation where it rained for so many days. A combination of these things, with lack of medicine and proper medical care, we are looking at a kind of a situation where we might be confronted with an epidemic.
Ajith, I want to ask you, you mentioned the sewage system. I want to ask you about the infrastructure right now. By your estimate, how much in terms of percentage of the Gaza Strip is still inhabitable, meaning, homes which are still livable in, things which work, systems which work, water that runs, for example?
Look, on the percentage, it's very difficult to give an update, but the UN Habitat and other UN entities that look into this have already said over 50% of the houses and residential buildings have been destroyed in the process. But what we also need to understand is several hospitals, schools, universities, and other infrastructure have also been damaged, either in the bombardment or in attacks, one way or the other. And then we have, of course, the situation where thousands of people are using the remaining, whatever is left, as IDP centers. At this point in time, you don't have anything functional. When we talk about sewage system, these are basically IDP camps in open field. I mean, there's no planned internally displacement camps. So they are building, desperate people are building tents with makeshift, plastic bags and wooden sticks. So you will find sewage flowing everywhere.
So, Ajith, from where you are, what's the biggest problem right now in terms of trying to bring in the necessary supplies, in terms of bringing the necessary aid, to Gazans who are homeless and displaced right now and going hungry?
I think it's two things. The access. I mean, first of all, what we've seen is in the past, over 500 trucks a day used to get into Gaza at a minimum. What we see now is at best an average of about 200 trucks, and that is primarily because of the scanning requirements of the trucks before they get into Gaza. But more importantly, once it gets into Gaza, it's not a given that these trucks are able to reach all the corners of the strip, either because of some attacks or because the permits that are requested from the Israeli Defense Force are rejected. So in the end, there are pockets of Gaza where the aid doesn't reach at all.
Ajith, I want to ask you about morale on the ground for UN workers there on the strip right now. You've lost, I know, over 130 workers in the Gaza Strip. I mean, what's it like? I mean, are UN workers still trying to do their best, under really extremely trying conditions? And what are the obstacles that they're facing, apart from the one you just mentioned?
Indeed. Look, I mean, these are solid UN staff who have experience of working in crisis situation. So it's not new to them. However, what we see here, the challenges are numerous. Electricity, communication. If they have to move around, they have to move around in enforced vehicles. There are space issues. Security is a major concern. Again, the challenges that we see for humanitarian aid to go in is also encountered by the UN staff. But the morale is something that they keep high, and they continue to do whatever they can do. And it's an extremely strong team of humanitarian and human rights colleagues on the ground.
Okay, Ajith, I want to get your thoughts in the meantime about the new independent panel that's going to assess UNRWA, among other agencies as well. Is this something that, in your view, is going to be helpful? I mean, insofar as in perhaps clears that cloud of uncertainty that some donors have?
We really hope so, because, I mean, UNRWA has been backbone of the humanitarian assistance for years in the OPT. As you know, UNRWA immediately took actions in suspending the staff who were allegedly involved in these crimes. So we really hope that this independent panel will get to the bottom of it and clarify the truth.
Ajith, you have extensive experience in the field of human rights. You've been to, quite a few different places, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, for example. Is the situation in Gaza different? Meaning, are there unique challenges you haven't come across before? Very quickly.
Indeed. Look, I mean, one thing we cannot forget is the geographic, face of Gaza. Gaza is basically landlocked, in the sense of people cannot flee anywhere at this point in time. So you have one side sea, on the other side Israel, and the other side Egypt, and people are not able to go anywhere, and they're constantly being attacked, and they are suffering at this point in time. So that's a major concern for us.